Okay, everybody, welcome to October, this month in our native gardens. This is St. Louis Wild Ones or Wild Ones St. Louis presentation. This is going to be up on their YouTube channel. You can see this is number 10, so this is the 10th one that's going to be up there, and we're going through December. So I'm glad you guys are here. And Marcia, do you want to say anything or not? You don't have to.
I just want to affirm how happy the chapter is, how happy I am that you are doing this. I think it's become very valuable, and to have the recordings of all of this is going to be great for folks to be able to refer to during the winter months when they're not doing as much outside and can do more thinking and planning.
Yeah, I hope that people do look at the videos later after the fact for review. Um, so. So this whole series is sort of based on the book that I wrote. That's a monthly garden planner. So we're going to be going over the October month today, and you can follow along in your book, or you don't really need a book to watch this either. And so today is October. This is aromatic aster. My aromatic aster has just started blooming. It's not in full bloom yet, but I've been seeing them like when I drive around neighborhoods. I was in Webster Groves today. I saw them in front yards all over the place because it's a really nice front yard garden plant. So for topics this month, we're going to be talking about leaving the leaves, fall colors in the garden this month. That's mostly about like fall color of like trees. Seeds that you can collect this month, propagating trees, asters, composting, and we have a very special guest speaker today. Jean Ponzi is going to talk to us about composting, fall fruits for birds, protecting native pollinator habitat, and what to plant this month for more color in your garden. And so at the first page of the chapter has this picture here of this bird bubbler, and it's how to build one. And I'm going to put in the chat, well, I'll put it in the chat later, a YouTube video that Robert Weaver made about how to build this bird bubbler that I've drawn here. And this is a picture of it, of a little goldfinch drinking out of the bird bubbler. The birds just love this kind of water shooting out of a rock. It's a nice little drinking area, clean their feathers. If you put a heater in the bottom of the bird bubbler, you can use it all year round. And so you can use a rock and drill a hole in it like this one right here and just put a pile of rocks around. Or you could get a concrete bird bath and use that to make a bird bubbler. But I recommend right now is a good time of year to make a bird bubbler so that you can get it going for winter and see those birds all winter long. I think all of you know that you leave your leaves in the fall. It's important for the reptiles and amphibians and a lot of caterpillars that are in the leaves, like the Luna moth is wrapped up in those leaves at the base of the tree. And if you throw out your leaves or mow or mulch your leaves, you're killing all your Luna moths. And so last October, I met this turtle while I was hiking, and I had just picked some pawpaws. And so I uh, ate my pawpaw and gave him the seeds and the skin, and we had lunch together. I bonded with that turtle for my lunch hour. But turtles also hibernate over winter in the leaves, so leave your leaves. Fall color is starting. I was admiring a dogwood at dinner time today. Mid-October is peak fall color for the maples, oaks, and hickories. And fall color is a way that migrating birds can clue in on where trees are that have fruits that they might want, like the dogwood. And so, and it's also a great way to have just another season of color in your yard. So here's some yellow fall color. We've got spice bush and willow and shining blue star. So this picture on the right is spice bush. Actually, that's spice bush. And the picture on the bottom here is shining blue star. For orange, the one on the right is, I think that's a dogwood. And then this one over here is spice bush again with orange. And then also sassafras, viburnums, smoke tree, chokecherry, and milkweeds even are a nice orange color. For red, we got black gum, that's this guy right here. Black chokecherry, chokeberry. There's the chokecherry and the chokeberry. They're so confusing. But this is chokeberry down here. Red maple, which this is chokecherry over here. I don't have a red maple pictured. Sugar maple, fragrant sumac, cardinal flower, that's a really cool color of red, and waxweed, which is one of the annuals we were talking about last month or the month before. Also, I have a picture here of little blue stem, which is a nice shade of red, and then winter creeper, which is a plant you should really use with caution in your yard, but it does have a beautiful fall color. Poison ivy also has a great fall color, but I don't recommend that one either. Oh, here we have some purple. So this is also little blue stem with this purple tinge here. This is a Monarda, it's a bee balm. And then over here, this purple is the cardinal flower. Also, you can get purple from dogwood and the penstemons. So not only trees have color, but also some plants have unusual color that people don't talk enough about. And here's some fall colors. So we have an aster blooming here. We have some seed heads from the echinacea. And then this is the waxweed here with the red fall color. All right, Brenda, this is where I was going to call on you. So Wild Ones has a walk coming up on the 4th. And it is tomorrow, I think. They're going to Shaw Nature Reserve. Brenda, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, this is our rain date. We were rained out because of Hurricane Helene. So we'll be doing Shaw. We're going to do a walk through the woodlands and out onto the prairie. And then the Whitmire Garden if we have time. The other thing that we're probably going to try to do this month, although we haven't set a date, is one of our favorite places to go is out at Engelman Woods, and down in the bottoms, it's just full of spice bush. And as Besa was saying, it has a lovely yellow color. So we thought we would try to go out there. I've never been out there in the fall, but see whether or not that whole bottom land is full of yellow spice bush is what we're hoping for. So as soon as we see that the spice bush are starting to turn, we'll probably be scheduling that. And that's all I have planned so far.
All right. Thank you. All right, this is the list of seeds you can collect this month. I'm not going through this. It's in the book. You can also find this online. And if you want this list, just email me and send it to you. But so you can see that we have some asters that are ready. As soon as they start to fluff, they're ready. We have some coneflowers here. If the goldfinches eat all the seeds out of there before you get them, you're not going to get any babies. We've got some more fluffers down here. The blazing stars, those are fluffers. So the blazing star stalks, when they get fluffy, I just cut off the entire stalk, stick it in a paper bag, kind of rub them together. It knocks all the fluff to the bottom. And then you can stratify that for winter. And here is some pictures of my bucket method. So we've got down here, we have cardinal flower. And so I just cut them off, turn them upside down in a bucket. And then this dust down here, this is the seeds from the cardinal flower. And then here I am doing it with obedient plant. Just cut it off, put it upside down in the bucket. The seeds, as it dries, the seeds fall off to the bottom. And then I just pour the bucket into a bag and I have seeds. I see somebody in the chat. Well, Teresa, are you home yet?
I am not.
All right.
But-
We'll go to, as soon as you get home, we'll do a chat, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So I have a little video, which has very poor audio, so I'll probably talk over it a little bit, but I'm going to play that now. This is how to clean your swamp milkweed seeds, or the way I enjoy doing it. So you wait till they split a little bit like that, and then you grab them by the top part. So my right hand's grabbing the top of the flower, and then I kind of just scrape the seeds off with my thumbnail there. You have to hold the top really tight so that the fluff doesn't escape. And then you throw the fluff on the ground. You can see I've been collecting seeds because it's all in my jacket there. So I'm going to grab another one, got it tightly by the top with one hand, and then I just scrape the seeds off. And if you get them at the perfect time, right when they're starting to split, the seeds come off so easily. If you're a little too early, they stick a lot. If you're too late, they've flown away. So this really is grabbing them at the perfect time. There I am with my little seed pile. And so one of the things, you never do this, if you're doing this outside, which I recommend outside, or you're going to have fluff all over your house. But don't do it in the wind or the seeds will blow away before you can collect them. But that's my favorite method of collecting milkweeds. And right now, there are quite a few that are at the right stage. There's also several that are not quite ripe yet, and there's also some that have already blown away. But check your milkweeds often so you can get them at the right stage. And clean them right away. If you collect them at the right time and then put them in a bag, they'll fluff out. And then you'll just be out of luck. Propagating trees. So right now is a good time to get nuts like acorns, walnuts, and take them and give them a 3-month stratification. And a lot of these nuts, you don't really want them to dry out very long, so you pick them up off the ground, you put them in stratification that day if you can. And this is a picture of my refrigerator. So I've got a Parmesan container here with some loose, some like moist potting mix in there. Like you don't want it to be wet, but just some moisture. Like it sticks to your fingers, but there's no dripping. And then I threw my red buckeye seeds in there and I stuck it in the fridge. So those will be ready to go in 3 months. They'll probably start sprouting out in the fridge. And then I can just put them in the ground. Another thing with nuts, especially if you ever try to grow like a bur oak and you put it outside, the squirrels are going to steal that. I was talking to Mervyn Wallace about these recently, and they said that the squirrels will chew through metal wire to steal a bur oak acorn. So protect your nuts. Asters, it's aster time of year. Like we had goldenrod time of year last month, and now it is aster year or aster month. So asters are really important. They're the host plant for many things like the American lady, the cabbage white, common buckeye, painted lady, pearl crescent, question marks, viceroys, skippers, sulfurs, admirals, swallowtails. It's a lot. And also good for migrating butterflies like monarchs that are coming through right now. And it's often the last meal for a bee before it goes into its hibernation. Those queen bees are like the queen bumblebees. They hibernate over the winter and they need those food stores to survive. Also, the birds will eat the fluffy seeds of the asters. I think their main purpose, though, is to feed those late migrants, the pollinators, and give them the overwintering resources. It looks like Teresa's home. All right.
Yes, I am home.
We have a question in the chat.
We do have a question. Marcia is wondering if you could tell how people can join the wildflower walks.
That would be Brenda.
Well, a couple of ways. You can go on the Read All About It, and there should be a link. So you click the link and then just sign up. Or there was an individual email that went out also that had a link. Or if you can't find those, you can actually go to the Wild Ones website under Bring It Home, dig in, and then volunteer events. Because these are considered volunteer events. That's really our sign up method, is through a volunteer program. And you just sign up as a volunteer and then join us.
And that, let's see, we have, oh, and then Besa has shared the videos that she promised us, and that is all we have for now.
So the first one, the one that ends in propagation.pdf. So that is the Shawnee to Reserve propagation guide, which has information about like what I mean by 3 months cold storage or cold stratification. And then the second one is the YouTube video of Robert Weber of Bird Bubbler.
And we do have one more question, actually. Marcia is wondering, are pink New England asters legally native?
So what I've heard, I don't know this for sure, is that Edgar Dennison introduced the pink New England asters. So he found them in the woods and then started spreading them around. So I guess they're legally native, but they've been kind of artificially selected for. But they were found wild in the woods as pink asters. Is that a good answer, Marcia?
Yes, thank you. That confirms what I thought I had understood, but so thank you.
All right, are there any other questions right now?
No, those are the only questions so far.
All right. So next up we have Green Jean with composting. And while she's getting ready here, I wanted to talk about these are the composting methods I have tried. So I've tried the tumbler bin, which is the one that you like crank and it goes around in a circle. I've tried the 3-bin system. I've tried pit composting, pot composting, vermicomposting, tried adding microbes. I tried lasagna layers, bokashi buckets, trenching, compost, and hugelkultur. So if anybody wants me to tell you about my experience with any of those, I can address those in the questions. But Jean's going to talk about the most common method of composting here and the one that I hope you decide to take up. So I'm going to stop my share so Jean can do it. Get on here.
Okie dokie. Hello, friends. Thank you, Bessa. Thank you for inviting me to pitch in here a little bit. I had not heard of about 3 of those actually. So news to me, there's always something new to learn. I will tell you that I am a pile composter. I'm really not a fan of buying plastic gizmos that look like plastic beehives or, then you turn them and all that, just because cycling stuff through it and the amount of stuff that can go through those things. And then at the end of their life, you have another plastic thing that you have to send to the landfill because there's no way to recycle or repurpose it, whatever. I am a pile composter. But that said, I am not producing compost for gardening. So full disclosure, this is the basics of compost. This is what happens in nature. You got your carbon, which is brown matter. It's called brown matter, and usually it is because it's pretty much dried out. And you need 3 parts of that to 1 part of nitrogen, nitrogen contributing material. That's called the green matter because it is most recently living and still has a fair amount of moisture in it, plus a little water, plus some oxygen, plus decomposers over time. And then voila, compost happens. Whether it's happening in a bin that you make and you tend, or it's happening on the forest floor. And when you add compost to any kind of garden, when you top dress it on turf, not that you have a lot of turf because this is wild ones here, or when you add it to your native plant garden, or you're using it as an amendment in rain gardening, it restores the sense of humus that soil has. And the little cartoon down at the bottom, that's from a project I did back in the late 1990s to make some billboards for Route 66 composting, which has since been subsumed into the behemoth of St. Louis composting. And the little characters there, they're holding the soil particles apart so that nutrients can percolate through, and they're holding the soil particles together so that erosion is presented. And that's humus. It's a 2-way connection within soil, and it's generated by soil organisms and promotes soil tilth and all those other kinds of excellent compost vocabulary words. This is what it looks like at the Missouri Botanical Garden. Down in our back of house, this is down behind the Whitaker concert stage, the Cohen Amphitheater, we call that, where the Whitaker concert stage is. Back in the corner, there is a giant pile, and all of the organic matter that gets pulled off the beds on our 79 acres gets pulled back there, sent back there in these little gator carts by our staff or volunteers and dumped on a giant pile. And when that pile gets big enough, we rent a tub grinder, which I will show you very briefly what that looks like. It's like a big food processor on the back of a flatbed, and we grind all that stuff up and send it out into another pile, and we let it cure, and then it goes right back out onto the beds. And the only material that would not go through this process right here, right on the garden grounds, would be any diseased plant material, because that could compromise the health of the living collections. We are not monitoring like thermophilic heating, and it's kind of an inexact science composting the organic matter that comes off of our beds. This is what happens. Bacteria and fungi colonize the organic matter. Even when you have decomposers, macroinvertebrates, they are actually grazing on the microbes that are breaking down the material. And when anything organic begins to decompose, begins to have cracks in its skin, or starts to shrivel up, lose moisture, bacteria and fungi move in, and they are the real workhorses of decomposition with any kind of organic matter. And anything formerly living, plant or animal matter, is going to decompose, but there's a good reason to only have plant matter in your whole home composting system. The temperature range that decomposition happens, it actually happens all year round. If you have an outdoor compost pile, decomposition is going to be happening in the killer heat of summer and in the dead of winter, when we actually still have winter conditions. But if you are producing compost, the mass of material that you have is going to keep that process going as efficiently as possible. And in those piles, here you have your little cartoons again. You have your carbon-containing brown matter, carbon like carbohydrates in our diet. That's what fuels the decomposition process. It's dry stuff. And if you need brown matter at any point on a compost pile, you can shred up brown paper bags. You can shred up phone books, which are ideal for composting, adding brown matter to your compost. Using shredded paper like office paper, high-grade paper, a better use for that is to put it in your recycling bin. But if you have a home shredder and you're actually shredding paper, you can absolutely use those shreds in your compost system. All ink today is soy-based ink. There's hardly any use of solvent-based ink anywhere. So it's not like you're adding toxins to your compost pile. And you can't put those little snowflakes of shredded matter in your home recycling anymore, even if they're in a brown paper bag. You get your nitrogen, your green matter from most formerly living stuff. A little oxygen fuels the process. Water keeps it moist, keeps it circulating. The decomposers do the work, and that unlocks that sense of humus. Ta-da! Decomposers. These are the mostly microinvertebrates that are doing the work of decomposition. They're doing it everywhere on Earth. And if we did not have the decomposers, everything living would have been up to its eyeballs in dead bodies a long, long time ago. Fungi, as we know, the fruiting bodies of mycorrhizal networks are mushrooms. They're the things that appear on the surface. Most of what is happening in the decomposition world is microscopic. But there also are a lot of critters that you want to have in your compost pile. Earthworms, roundworms, not jumping worms. We don't want to be circulating those. Beetles, sow bugs, pill bugs, all those kind of critters are doing the work of grazing on microbes and helping break down organic matter, unlocking the nutrients, returning those nutrients in the form of compost that then get reabsorbed into soil. Yay, 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 win, win, win. What can you compost in your home composting system? Basically, anywhere near your house, you're not going to want the kinds of decomposers that are breaking down animal matter. Like I said, everything animal, vegetable, it all is going to decompose. That's zero waste in nature. But most of us don't want maggots, frankly, in our compost pile or near our homes. So this is a pretty good list of the do's and don'ts. You don't want any fats. You don't want any oils. You don't want any dairy products. You certainly don't want any meats. You can put houseplant trimmings. You can put garden trimmings. You can have, if you have bark mulch or shredded stuff like that. I would not put dryer lint in my compost pile anymore, knowing what I know about microplastics. Um, Even though I'm not using compost in my home, in my life, to produce food kind of stuff. You can put tea bags in. You don't have to worry about the little staples or the little strings. I do always take the stickers off any kind of fruit or vegetable. Damn those stickers, little plastic things. They will not decompose and you have to pick them out. Eggshells can be composted. They're one exception to the no animal matter rule in your compost, but really a better use for eggshells, especially if you're doing food gardening, is to save them and crumble them up and make little mandalas of them around the kinds of plants that things like slugs or other kind of creepy crawlies, slimy movers would use to get to your plants. They make a really, really good barrier around those kinds of plants. Types of compost bins and uses. This is a presentation that I often give to municipalities, especially in St. Louis County. St. Louis County makes grants to municipalities that underwrites the cost of purchasing these plastic things and also purchasing in-home compost collection containers. I really, really am not a fan of the plastic bins or the turners. You can't, like I said, you can't get enough stuff in them, and if you're taking things out of, if you're taking material out of it, there's no way to really complete the cycle of decomposition. But there are some people, this is kind of a good starter thing for some people, and municipalities that are encouraging compost will get these things and then they'll bring me in to tell people really don't use them because they're kind of dumb. If you are, if you want to produce compost if you want to produce it for food gardening, or you're going to be doing a rainscaping, situation, if you want to be generating it, the 3-bin system is the way to go. And the picture on the lower left there, that is your classic 3-bin system. You can have hardware cloth on the sides. You want to have wooden slats that go down that you can take up and remove in the front of the bins. And basically the way it works is it doesn't matter which of the 3 is happening in. One is a bin that you're feeding. And in this image, that's the bay on the left. That's where you put all the material that comes out of your kitchen or your garden. 2 is once that bay is full, then you leave it and you start to turn it. And that's where decomposition is really happening. And then number 3 is the bin where most of the material has decomposed. That's pretty much what I would call a finishing pile at this point, but you can start digging out, shoveling out compost from that 3rd bay to use it. It takes about 6 weeks for this process to happen in our average St. Louis area growing season. And that's like from, literally end of February now, early March, all the way through to the beginning of December. So you can cycle material through this 3-bay system throughout your growing season and continually be feeding stuff into the bin and continually be taking stuff out of the bin. You can also make bins from hardware cloth and 1-by material. You can pile up hay bales. If you move the viewer here around, you can see these things on the screen. There are a bunch of really good DIY compost bin making instructions online. If you just Google DIY compost bin, you'll see all that kind of stuff. It's really simple. And once you have a system like this, you've got it for life. It's going to last really a good long time. But don't buy the dumb plastic things, really. This is my pile. This is actually in my backyard. It's 3-sided, open on the front. On the back and the sides are landscape timbers that when Dale and I moved in, my husband Dale and I moved in 1994, whoa, our place was landscaped with railroad ties. That was so lovely. So of course we picked them up right away, but we reused them immediately. The long end is right behind my head and the short ends are parallel to the little fence here. They kind of step down. You can see doot doot. There's another longer one. There's another longer one. And I basically just pile stuff up in there. I mean, when I do remove leaves, which I mostly leave the leaves, but when I do remove any matter from our urban forest, which is what our place is, it just goes right on the pile. The bucket there in my hand, that's my kitchen compost bucket. It's like a little miniature 5-gallon bucket. We got it from O'Connell's Pub. It had pickles in it. I have one extra spare in the basement, my little 5er, but I think O'Connell's Pub is being sold, so I'll probably never be able to get them again. And we're also overhauling our kitchens. So I have a feeling that the person I live with is going to vote for a spiffier compost bin than the crummy plastic bucket, but that's okay. I like to, we use a coffee filter in our coffee maker. And I like to put when I take it out of the basket, I put it in the bottom of the compost bucket and then I pile other stuff up on it. And then I take it out and dump it. So I never really have to clean out the bottom of that bucket because I always have that coffee filter and the grounds in the bottom of it. And I personally don't turn this pile because, like I said, I'm not composting to produce compost. I'm composting to decompose organic stuff that we have. We are not food gardeners. We have grown a forest. I can grow 1 pot of basil. That's all the sun I have. So don't really need to do much. And when I need compost, I just shove the stuff in the front back and I dig out a few shovelfuls from the front of the pile. Whatever's in the back of the pile, someday somebody who lives here longer than I am is going to really have some solid gold. That is my pile. This is a little schematic of, so it's kind of unfortunate because it uses the graphic shape of those black plastic beehive thingies. basically, when you're starting a composting system, you want to kind of layer stuff up. You can put some sticks on the bottom of your pile or your container if you must use a container, because that gives you a little aeration from the bottom up. Then you want a layer of brown matter, a layer of green matter, a layer of brown matter, a layer of green matter, and a layer of brown matter. So 3 parts brown to 2 parts green, or did I say 4 parts brown to 2 parts? It's either 3 to 2 or 4 to 2. You know, basically, you want your compost, you want your decomposing matter to be the moisture content of a well-wrung sponge. If it gets too wet, it's going to be soggy. And then what do? You add brown matter. And in the summer, when brown matter is scarce, that's when you might want to shred up brown paper bags or shred up your phone books or shred up newspaper if you can get it. In the winter, when there's not very much green matter, flowers that come out of our house go on there. Certainly stuff keeps coming out of the kitchen, lettuce butts and, peelings and coffee grounds and all that kind of stuff. Coffee grounds are brown, but they have moisture in them. So I count them as green matter because green matter, nitrogen, it's bringing moisture into the pile, into the system. Down here
Hey,
it says,
Jean,
yeah,
can I add? So usually when my compost is stinky, it's usually because it doesn't have enough brown and it's just too wet.
yep,
And that's when
yep,
it starts to smell.
yep. Yes, you can tell if it's too wet, add brown. If it's too dry and it stops, add green if you can. Or when we have a heat wave like we did in August, late July, early August, after it stopped raining and it really got hot, then decomposition slows down, but it's never going to really totally stop. And if you want to produce compost, yes, you do have to turn it. If you just want to decompose stuff like I do, the lazy person's decomposition passion, you don't have to turn it at all. Vermicomposting. This is another method that I am very familiar with. We used to do this in the Earthways home when our group was working out of that visitor education facility in Grand Center. Basically, you have a container and you have one population of macroinvertebrates, one type of macroinvertebrates, which are red wiggler worms, are the classic ones. I guess there's a couple of new species of small worms like this that do well in a small space. I have only worked with red wigglers personally. We used to get them at Paul's Bait and Tackle on Chippewa. That's out of business, but now there's a bait and tackle store somewhere in St. Charles County, or you can order red wigglers online. And in a situation like this, you have either you have this is a good use of buying a plastic container. You have one that has a series of stacking trays, and each of those trays has holes punched in it, a grid of holes. So the top tray is where the worms are working, where the decomposition is happening, that you are feeding. And as the worms are grazing down on the microbes are breaking down the organic matter, and the worm castings, the poop, drops down through those trays. Worm castings are an organic fertilizer that you can put immediately on plants. Unlike chicken manure or horse manure or other kinds of manures that you really have to let age or they'll burn your plant roots. Worm castings, superfood for plants. Worm castings will keep in a glass container, a jar, or like, a chip dip container for a year and a half or more. I always put worm castings on my house plants in the spring, spoon them in with a tablespoon and then water them in. Worm castings make great gifts. The one thing about, so in a worm bin, you get your browns from shredded paper, and your greens is the stuff that you're feeding into the worm bin, your kitchen scraps or your trimmings off your house plants. You still want to have that proportion of 3 parts brown to 1 part green, or 4 parts brown to 2 parts green. You want to have more brown than green, and you want to totally cover the entire surface of the worm bin with shredded paper. It's very, very important. It helps keep down fruit flies and it shades the worms. You're using a small worm here, red wigglers, Icenia fetida. They are a surface dweller, unlike Lumbricis terrestris, the earthworms, which like to live deep in the soil and they get really, really big. So you can have literally hundreds of worms in a worm bin like this. You can make your own worm bin from a Rubbermaid tub with an extra lid. You drill holes in the bottom. You prop it up on a couple of blocks so that water can drain out. Worms respire through their skin, so they cannot live in standing water. They will drown. And never, ever, ever put banana peels in your worm bin. Time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like banana. Bananas are a sure bet to infest your worm bin with fruit flies. Good luck getting them out. And if you're going to do this, if you're going to do vermicomposting, absolutely get this book, Worms Eat My Garbage. This is the Bible of vermicomposting. It was written by the Larry Applehoff. She visited us in 2004. This is me and Mary. I drove her all over town. Guess what she talked about the whole time? Worms. Surprise. And you can get them from her website, wormwoman.com, or Flowerfield Enterprises. Mary Applehoff was an internationally respected expert on vermicomposting, and she was really working toward the end of her life at promoting vermicomposting as a composting process at scale for major events. The Sydney Olympics had vermicomposting going on. There were more than 6 million worms working in their athlete village, but see a worm on a metal platform? No, so unfair. Bokashi is another method. This is not one that I've done personally, but it's one that my colleagues have taught about. In Bokashi, basically you add an activator like mash or bran to organic material in a bucket in your house that partially ferments the material, and then you dig a hole outside and you put the stuff in the hole and it continues to decompose out there. Really, that's all I can say about it because I have never tried to do it. Bokashi comes, I believe, from Japan, but it might be from Korea. So when you think about that, this is coming from island nations where there is not a lot of room to practice decomposition for gardeners, and so this is an alternative in smaller spaces. By the way, vermicomposting is really good to do in classrooms. It's good to do if you're an apartment dweller. You want to keep your worms indoors. They can only survive in a temperature range that's basically from about 50, 55 degrees Fahrenheit up to maybe 75 degrees Fahrenheit. They'll cook outdoors in the summer and they'll freeze in the winter. So you either want to keep your worm bin indoors in the kitchen or you can keep it in the basement. Don't keep it in the garage. Your worms will die. And don't drive it around the back of your car. They'll try to escape and they'll get trapped in the carpeting in your hatchback. This has happened to me. I had to help them escape with a credit card. Okay, I think that's about it for home composting. I can show you composting as it happens on an industrial scale if you want, or I can stop and take questions. Bessa, your choice.
I think we should go to questions. I really loved your illustrations on it. Those were really
Thank you.
cute.
Thank you. It was very fun to do that project. I did that with my friend Chris Casey, who's an artist, and in my next life, I would love to be a cartoonist. He is one.
Well, next time I'm looking at my compost, I'll have to think of it as little superheroes working together.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody have any questions about composting?
There are not any questions in the chat yet, except Laura would like to know what Bessa's favorite type of composting is.
Favorite type would be, well, so I think the one I'm doing the most right now is a combination between culture and pit composting, and it doesn't involve any stirring or mixing, which is work. So
Mhm.
I'm all for easy. You dump it and you don't touch it again, kind of composting. But I did the vermicomposting, and it's kind of fun. It's like having pets. So, but my vermicompost grew maggots. I screwed it up at some point, and
Did you put some animal matter in there?
I must have, or somebody at my house threw their scraps in there. It was right next to the sink, so
Sad.
and I just couldn't handle the maggots. I don't know, they were gross.
Yeah.
And before we move on, I have a question for both of you. Have you noticed that compost does differently if you place it in the sun versus the shade, or is it pretty much the same either way?
Well, if you have a compost pile or, any kind of a composting system in direct sunlight, you're going to really add a lot of heat to it and it's going to decrease the amount of moisture in it. I think it's probably better to have your composting, your compost pile, or especially your composting system if you want to produce compost in at least partial shade. And another thing is that there are municipal ordinances about composting that are increasingly just wonderful, really appreciating composting, permitting composting, but a lot of them say things like your compost place has to be at least 10 feet from a property line or some kind of thing like that. So that's another thing to think about where you put your composting system so that it's easy and efficient to get at, so it's not cooking and so it's not right in your neighbor's face.
Thank you.
I like to keep my compost where it will get early morning sun so it can heat up, but then
Mm.
direct midday shade so that it doesn't dry out too much.
That's
And
the
also
whole point.
keeping it near where the hose is so I can just dump water on it every time when I'm putting the hose away, I just throw it in the composter to pour some more water in there.
Yeah, in my
Great tips.
experience, watering compost is, unless, I mean, again, if you just are composting because you want stuff to decompose from your place, there's a lot less that you need to do. But if you're composting because you want to produce compost, especially for food gardening, then yeah, you do want to water it periodically. You do want to check the moisture levels. It makes sense to turn it. Um, Using a method like pit composting or hugelkultur, that is basically you're creating a trench or you're creating a pit and you're putting material in there and you're letting it decompose over time. And then eventually, if you want to, you can dig that stuff out, that decomposed matter, and you can use it for whatever you would use compost for. That's another option. But if you are doing any kind of serious food gardening or schools that are doing gardening, we always really, really recommend and try to help them connect with resources to build and maintain a 3-bay composting system.
Nice.
And my method with the pit composting is so each year I have a new pit and then I put my vegetable garden on top of the pit the next year. So my vegetable garden
Whoa.
moves to go where the compost pile was, and then I don't have to move it at all, which is nice.
Just one more thing I want to say about composting. Don't put compostable food serviceware in your home composting pile. That stuff is designed to decompose. It's made to decompose, but in industrial scale facilities. If you put a little stack of plates, compostable plates, or you stick compostable forks, which are made from they're polymerized plant oils as opposed to petroleum oil. It will break down eventually, but you will get really ticked about it because before it starts to break down, that stuff will turn into rocks. You have, in a commercial composting system, which is where that stuff is designed to be decomposed, everything is ground up and then microorganisms can get to the material, but it doesn't make sense for us as home composters to grind material before we put it in. So if you're going to be having a party and you're using compostable food serviceware, if you know someplace where you can take compost and drop it off, or you participate with a home composting valet, kind of that valet level service, like New Earth Farms is doing a wonderful job. Perennial City Composting is another one that you can hire to come and take your food waste. I believe that you can make arrangements for them to take compostable food serviceware and stuff like that. Say if you have a party and you want to do compostable as opposed to washable, but you'd want to check with them before that. But don't put it in your own pile. It won't break down for 150 years and you will be mad. How do you keep
Thanks so
animals like
much, Jean.
how do you keep animals like raccoons away from your compost? You can't. You can't. But if you are not putting any animal matter in your compost, it's going to be a lot less attractive. And particularly, it's not going to attract then really undesirable critters like rats or, we have possums living in our yard. I'm sure they go out and snack on the compost. I'm happy for them to snack on the compost. But that's just, a mutuality. Don't put pet waste in your compost because a home composting system will not reach a thermophilic level to break down any pathogens in your pet waste. Sorry, you just can't do it. And don't be putting compostable plastic bags and stuff like that in there. It's just going to take really a long time to break down at the scale of a home composting system.
Yeah, I just thought of a new composting method that I forgot to mention that I do use is I have a pet rabbit, and rabbit poop is just like worm castings as far as you can use it immediately. It's not a hot waste. And also you can use fish poop too, but I'm not sure how you collect fish poop to put on your plants.
Susan is letting us all know that oh no, wait, where'd it go? Oh no, it's Penny. Blue jays steal the eggshells in her compost.
Could be worse.
Yep.
If there's no more questions for me, I'm going to say thank you again, Besa, for including me in this, and thanks, Wild Ones friends. Glad to get to share one of, frankly, my passions. I might have said this before, but it bears repeating. The two things that I would be absolutely bereft without: my clothesline and my compost pile.
Thank you, Jean. Hey, another thing with your compost is you should compost your yard waste. Don't throw it in the creek. That's a pet peeve of mine is when I go to a park and somebody's thrown all the yard waste into the creek. And the creeks are not meant to take our nutrient waste. It causes algae blooms and fish kills. So keep your yard waste in your yard and compost it, or send it off to the industrial composting, but don't throw it over the back fence. It's also when you throw compost into the woods behind your house, that's really great habitat for growing honeysuckle. So don't do that either. So another thing that we're looking at this fall is the fall fruit for birds. We have the fall color with the leaves, but also the fall fruit. So the black gum trees have fruit right now, but they also have the pretty leaves, dogwood, spicebush, sassafras. They all are beautiful in multiple ways and are very attractive to the birds. I've been noticing my beautyberry is turning purple right now. This is my beautyberry over here on the left. And then we also have, I think this is the strawberry bush right here, which is in the euonymus family, but it's a native shrub. It has these beautiful red berries. It's a real treat when you see this when you're hiking. If you want to find beautyberry in the wild, you need to go down to southern Missouri or even into Arkansas if you want to see some big beautyberries. We are protecting native pollinator habitat, so we need to let the overwintering bees and other overwintering insects be undisturbed as they hibernate over winter. And so the ground nesting bees, normally they want a patch of bare soil. Usually it's kind of at the edge of your driveway or around your foundation, those areas where you're not growing anything anyway. So let the bees have it. And if you see bees going in and out of the ground, as long as they're not yellow jackets, just let them do their thing. And overwinter and try not to step on them. Here's another fall color picture. I thought it's fall color texture. So we've got asters in the front. This looks like aromatic aster. Over here we have some shining blue star. Back here, I think those are Black-Eyed Susan. There's more Shining Blue Star, more Aster. Got a mountain mint, I guess, on the right here. And some big blue stem, I'm guessing. So lots of cool textures, and it can be about shades of brown and gray too in the winter. All right, if you are looking for more color this month in your garden and you want purple, I would try New England Aster. That's the #1 purple winner this month. But also we have some obedient plant over here. We have this goldenrod that has these purple leaves. The purple coneflower is still going. Ironweed's still going. And then down here in the bottom right is the waxweed, the Clufea, with the purple flowers and reddish purple leaves. We still have a lot of yellow going on. So cliff goldenrod, that's this one, bottom right. Zigzag goldenrod is up here. This might be blue stem goldenrod actually, but there's also zigzag goldenrod. So cliff goldenrod likes it kind of dry and sunny. Zigzag and blue stem like it more forest, woodland area. And we still have Black-Eyed Susans. This is Texas Green Eyes. Down here, I think that is a Brown-Eyed Susan. And this is Gray-Headed Coneflower. So lots of yellow still. Blues. I've got blue lobelia. I think I've listed blue lobelia for blue for like the last 4 months in a row now. Down here we have Drummond Aster, which is an aster mistake I made. I planted it. I mean, it's a beautiful flower, but it is taking over my yard. And I have been trying to kill this plant for the last 5 years, maybe. I still have not succeeded. Here on the right, we have aromatic aster. If you want to take over a woodland with aster, try Drummond aster. And here's another prairie picture. So we've got some goldenrods, Beckias. This little blue thing here is the blue sage. There's a little bit of rattlesnake master. We've got some Indian grass. Indian grass is another plant you don't want in your home garden. It's fine for a prairie. A little bit aggressive for the home garden. But I just love the way these seeds look. Like we got the grays, the browns, the blacks. I think it's fantastic. And we have time for questions again. Anybody else have questions?
We do have a question. Well, no, not a question, but a comment. Penny is letting us know that Helenium autumnal is great for yellow color in the fall.
Yeah, that's the sneeze weed or the Helen's flower.
And then
Which
I
is-
noticed.
Yeah,
Oh,
excellent.
go ahead. Yeah. I noticed you had not mentioned mist flower under blue, and I was wondering if there was a reason.
No, I should have mentioned that one. Under, yeah, blue and purple. That's also one that I don't generally say you need mist flower in your yard because it really does take over. I have a ton of it in my yard and I have no regrets about that. But it is aggressive and spreads. It has fluffy seeds, so it sort of moves along. And also, like the way I deal with my mist flower in the fall, like after it looks bad, after all of its fluff has dispersed, I pull the entire plant out. But there's always a little bit of roots left and they come back the next year. So once you have mist flower, you always have mist flower.
Good to know. Thank you.
But it's a beautiful shade of purple.
And we have no other questions at this time.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. We're going to meet again. It will be our second to last meeting, November 6th, 7 p.m. And we're going to talk more about fall, because then it will really be fall. It's officially fall now, but it's the end of summer in my mind. But I hope you guys have a great month of fall and we have beautiful weather and get a little bit more rain, I hope. We could use a little bit more rain. A soft, gentle rain. All right, guys. Thanks for
Thank you,
coming.
Besa.
Thank
Besa.
you.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.
You still here, Dawn? See if I can end the meeting.
I can
Stop
turn you off.
recording.
I can stop recording.
All right. I'm glad you came back. I don't see if I can end the meeting or not.